This movie tells a story about Azrael, a young woman who has escaped imprisonment. She is recaptured to be sacrificed to an ancient evil in the wilderness, but fights for her own survival. This movie has one major theme that has already been a staple of the genre for years, which is that none of the characters speak. Unfortunately, it leans hard into this scream-free gimmick that can't make up for its flimsy storytelling. The movie is really familiar, as it checks all the requisite boxes without necessarily bringing anything new to the table. The plot line is really thin, as there is nothing substantial to this story. The lore around what happened to the world, what the creatures in the woods are, or how the cult came to be, all are largely irrelevant. The movie proves incapable of explaining its own premise. The problem is that when a film eschews all dialogue, it needs thematic density to break through the lack of dialogue, so it needs to compensate with strong visual language and narrative momentum. However, this movie has neither. While the experimental premise of this movie is commendable on paper, the film finds itself unable to visually convey many basic tenets of its story. In struggling to reconcile image and meaning, it ends up yielding an uncanny experience that invites too many dueling interpretations, and not nearly enough emotional certainty. The details about the world building don't matter to Azrael, as she's just trying to get through the night, so they don't need to matter to her audience. However, there's something crucial lacking here, which is character. Since nobody ever mutters a word, you never learn much about Azrael or anyone else, which means you don't necessarily care when the monsters occasionally rip their heads off and suck the blood out of them. Silence is both the film's main asset and its principal limitation, creating moments of suspense, but also leaving us in the dark, to the point that it feels more like a gimmick than anything substantial. Because Azrael has no dialogue, her actions become her primary character definition, and that leaves us with very little. The two main actors are committed to the bit, gesticulating wildly and passionately, but the specifics of their performances clash with the movie's premise. Though it's eventually implied that they've been mute all their lives, the characters behave as if they've only just stopped speaking moments ago, right as the cameras rolled. They don't seem to have figured out any shorthand methods of communication or understanding, which hints at flimsy world building and leads to a malformed romantic dynamic between them. Rather than people who understand each other, they behave like strangers thrown together by dangerous circumstances, though there's little clarity about what those circumstances are. The movie rarely presents the risks or consequences of speaking out loud by portraying the desire to do so. Its attempts at religious world building only lead to further ambiguity. The forest setting feels a tad redundant, and the movie could have benefited from more variety all around. Eventually, this movie becomes a flat genre exercise, a series of poorly staged combat sequences, and some creepy creatures that look like severely burned humanoids. Overall, it's not worth to watch this movie in theaters, just wait on your streaming service.